Hello and welcome to another In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College. I'm Dr. Deborah Curitan and I work in research development at the University of Wolverhampton.
I'm Dr. Ben Halligan, I'm Director of the Doctoral College.
This is part of our series of vlogs where we are looking at making an application for a research degree. And in this vlog, we're going to be looking specifically at the title of the research proposal that people make. I think the reason that we decided to do this vlog is that it often causes people some stress, and people get a little bit concerned about how they should structure the title and how permanent that title is within the process of the research degree beyond application. I think it's worthwhile here sharing my experience of titles of doctorates, and the doctorate title that I started off with was about 3 sentences long, and even halfway through my research degree I was still having problems remembering the whole of the title in the right order. And in the end, the thesis that I submitted and was examined had a title that had got 5 words in it, which was Assertion and Depression, the Nexus. So it's not a permanent thing, but let's talk about how you might start looking at a research title and what are the important aspects to include. So Ben, what do you think makes a good title?
I think the title has to really reflect the subject and the scope of the project, just those 2 things. But I think the point you make is very important, that most people will change their titles during the course of the research. It would be slightly strange not to, as the research takes on definition and focus. So for anybody that's sort of at that point of putting an application together, I wouldn't worry too much about the title. I would give it something descriptive, something neutral, in the knowledge that it's perfectly fine to change the title a bit later. So typically, I think it's a matter of language or terminology, and a good way of perhaps getting your head around constructing a title would be to look at titles of other PhD theses that have been awarded. You can find thousands online, but it's stuff like an investigation into, new approaches to, a survey of, reconsidering this, that and the other. So some sort of terms like that often are in a title. Maybe some sort of date or some sort of geographical area or some sort of scope or some sort of indication of where on the chemical chart you'll be working. Those kinds of things would also be in the title. I think generally there are 2 types of titles. One is entirely and very usefully descriptive, and I think you often get those for hard science. The other, perhaps more social sciences, humanities subjects tend to be a bit glossier. They may have a pun, they may have a phrase that encapsulates the central tension that's being looked at, or the central theme that's emerged, with a colon, then an investigation into or rethinking approaches to or something like that, and then the actual subject matter. So those are the 2 kinds of titles that are in operation. But at the point of application, I wouldn't allow it to waylay you or delay making an application. I would just do a draft holding title. You can say, here's a draft title, in the knowledge that most probably you're going to update it as the research progresses.
Okay, so are there any things that you would recommend people don't do when writing a title or generating a title for their proposed work?
Yeah, I think 2 things, Deborah. One is not to have some enormous title, and it could quite easily wind up looking at people with this medical condition in this geographical area who are unemployed in these years with respect to interlocking other medical, this kind of thing. So straight away it could be a few lines worth of title, and that's cumbersome, and it may have bibliographic challenges associated with it somewhat later down the line. So I think something a bit shorter would be easier. So that's a bit of advice number one. And a bit of advice number two is that thinking beyond this, and once the PhD is done, other people will be looking at your work and they have a very quick question, which is this relevant to the research I'm doing or the writing or the reading I'm doing? So the title needs to generate an understanding of what's in the thesis. Beyond that, there's an abstract, so there's a summary of a couple of hundred words, which they may read. But if the title is vague and ambiguous, if you think about some other researcher going through 50 titles of PhDs and they're not sure, okay, forget it, let's just move to the next. So it needs to really encapsulate quite correctly what the research is about. Having said all that, to go back to our earlier point, you may not at this point of application really quite know. So this is probably a question that you do a draft answer for at the point of application, and that you would do a final answer to some years down the line, pretty much in that last 6 months before you submit. You would do a fine tuning or rethinking or amending, that kind of thing.
And that's quite common, isn't it, with research degrees? Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you for sharing those insights, Ben. If you're interested in applying for a research degree with the University of Wolverhampton, please do go to our research pages and to our application portal. There will be advice there on how to make an application, or if you've got any questions, please do drop us an email at doctoralcollege, all one word, at wlv.ac.uk, and we'll happily answer your questions. Thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.